Hello, I'm Grant Goodeve. Welcome to If Walls Could Talk. When Jimmy and Melanie Potter learned their previous house was going to become the site of a new interstate on-ramp in Hot Springs, Arkansas, they began to look for another place to call home. They started their search in a neighborhood that was already well established, the historic Quapaw Prospect area. The Potters liked the older neighborhood and the people they met, and in 1992 they found a comfortable bungalow. The house needed a little work to bring out its character, but after they started restoration, the couple discovered that the old house had a poetic character all its own.
Everything about the house is a home. It's a good, comfortable home.
Finding comfort was exactly what Jimmy and Melanie Potter were looking for in a home.
We like the high ceilings. We like old houses. We're just those type people.
When the couple found their 1923 bungalow, they saw its historic charm even from a distance.
The house itself, just looking at it from outside, just looks inviting.
But once inside, the Potters realized they were going to be uncomfortable for quite a while.
It wasn't in the greatest shape, and it wasn't in the worst shape.
There was so much character, we just needed to bring that character out.
Yeah.
And as Jimmy and Melanie discovered, bringing out that character took years of hard work. It turns out their first year was set in stone. In the couple's carport, a dated discovery marked the labors of those before them.
It wasn't long after we moved in here that I came out and found this 4328.
The Potters can only guess that 1928 was when the driveway was added on.
I like to see things that were original.
Seeing the date only scratched the surface. The couple wanted to learn more, but they didn't have to stay at home to uncover its history. They went to work and found relatives of the original owners.
I work at a hospital, and the granddaughter-in-law works in a different department. And she said, I used to live in your house, and she started telling me a little bit about it.
The Potters learned the home was built by Dr. George Fletcher and his wife Vera. Dr. Fletcher was one of the most respected doctors in Hot Springs. When the Potters expanded their kitchen, they discovered their only link to the doctor had been bottled up for years.
After I got all of the old flooring removed, I determined next that the underneath had to be cleaned up. So I started digging, and in my digging I found some really interesting little items. Some of these items being medicine bottles.
Jimmy's remedy was to uncover more clues about the Fletchers. When he mentioned their name to his paint store customers, he realized the doctor wasn't the only popular person in the family.
They just light up when you mention that I live in the same house that Vera Blood Fletcher built, and they're like, I knew her, she was such a wonderful lady.
It seemed everyone knew Vera Blood Fletcher except the Potters. Then, when Jimmy explored the attic one day, he found his own answers. Jimmy uncovered hidden boxes that revealed Vera's poetic prose.
I found numerous booklets that were called Scripts and Scraps, written by Vera, and they were in excellent condition. I did not know what they were. Basically, they had her name at the bottom, and so I started kind of researching a little further. That's when we found that she was a lady of many talents, and this was one of her prized possessions.
The Potters learned from their neighbors that Vera Fletcher was a gifted poet, artist, and photographer. Their discovery, dated 1934, was actually a collection of poems Vera read on her radio program called Scripts and Scraps. For 17 years, Vera always signed off with the same verse that she placed at the end of the book.
And so good luck and cheerio. Here we are at the end, and I hope a new friend.
Even more scraps found in the attic threaded Vera's story together. Jimmy discovered her sewing machine, photography equipment, and an Art Deco lamp.
It's finding your books, it's finding some of the other things. I mean, you can use your imagination and you're there, back in time.
In their own time, the Potters have learned a lot about the Fletchers, but one mystery still remained. With all the coats of exterior paint they uncovered, for years they couldn't figure out which color was original to the home.
You know what? This was green, this was yellow, this was blue, this was green, this was this color.
The couple couldn't make rhyme or reason out of the layers. But to Melanie's surprise, she discovered a verse from Vera in a local history book that mentioned a house.
It said, there was a little poem in there, we built a house of green and white.
The poem verified what Melanie suspected, that green was the original color. She contacted the doctor's son, Jack, and he gave Melanie the poetic justice she was looking for.
And so when the son told me, I said, was it green and white? And he said, yes, it was. And so that was great. I mean, that was great finding that out.
From stripping and scraping to their discovery of scripts and scraps, the Potters have created the comfortable house they imagined. And with their hard work, they finally found their home's special personality.
This is more us. The character of the home deals directly with the character of the individuals who live there. And I think that says a lot for the type or the types of people who have these types of homes.
The Potters say their house will always be the Fletcher house. And it seems every day someone mentions Vera Blood Fletcher. A local author once brought Melanie one of Vera's paintings, and a neighbor showed Melanie a poem that the neighbor received as a wedding gift from Vera. Jimmy and Melanie say they enjoy the stories behind the local celebrity that used to live in their house. Coming up next, discoveries in this Coronado, California Victorian create a hullabaloo of history for the couple restoring it. There's more to hear if walls could talk.
Take one.
Welcome back to If Walls Could Talk. Tony and Nancy Santos thought they'd have to wait until retirement to get the Victorian home of their dreams. But it was on his way to work one day last year that Tony spotted their 1880s dream house in his rearview mirror. Just about a week later, the Santos owned that house in Coronado, California, just outside San Diego. The Santos have worked hard for the last year to bring the house back. Parts of it are already a showcase. Others still need some work. But throughout the home, Tony and Nancy have been rewarded with clues to the history of the house and the area. They are no longer looking through the rear view, but still looking back on history. Coronado, California is best known as the place of first resort. The famous Hotel del Coronado was built here in 1888 and is still a California landmark. Just about a mile away is a Victorian home built the same year as the Hotel Del. It too has retained its old world charm. But when Tony and Nancy Santos made the purchase, it was anything but luxurious.
It wasn't habitable. Walls were cracked, plumbing wasn't in very good condition. It was terrible as far as I was concerned.
The house had been converted into 3 apartments. But Nancy and Tony are a hands-on couple, and they wanted to give the dented rental a new lease on life.
When I first stepped into it, I was just immediately fixated on the arch. And even though it was boarded up, I knew there was much more to it, and that sold me immediately.
The couple's hard work has paid off, and many of the elegant rooms have been converted back to the Victorian glamour of the home's 19th century roots.
We love the elegance. We're not pretentious people, we're very down to earth, but we just love what it exudes. It's just elegance.
An elegance probably imagined by J.Y. Jackson when he built the house in 1888. Jackson was one of the community's founding fathers, working as a mineral manager for Elisha Babcock, the man who built the Hotel del Coronado. In an upstairs bathroom wall, the Santos found hidden links to their home's builders. A flathead screw box, an old tin, and a shredded 1889 copy of Harper's Weekly may not seem like much to get excited about until you see that they are real links to the home's heritage.
We find it totally amusing that we could get excited. We danced a jig when we saw this box of flathead nail.
The Jackson family only lived in the house for a short time. It is the second owners, the Balloos, who left behind even more clues and an even greater history.
Let me try to read it for you. The fox and the cat, as they traveled one day with moral discoveries, cut shorter the way.
Up in the same bathroom wall, the Santos also found a writing tablet and school lessons they believed belonged to Frances Ballou, the daughter of the second owner.
I mean, the back of the cover. actually has chalk writings and pencil markings, and it's very thrilling for me. I can see Frances Ballou as she sat down in the evening with her parents. This to me is a clear, indication that she was here. She's left us history, left us her sign that she lived in here.
A few years later, in 1909, Frances Ballou created her own history lesson when she married Lyman Gage in the house. Gage was older than Frances and already well known as President McKinley's Secretary of the Treasury.
It feels as though these people are still in the home. I mean, the wedding, Frances Ballou's wedding, is very thrilling. I still feel their presence.
More recently, the Ballou's presence jumped off the page and onto the house. The Santos discovered a true Ballou connection was as close as their front door.
Oh, it was covered, layers and layers of decades of paint. You couldn't even recognize the detail here. It looked like just a panel. I did hear when I was checking out the door that there was a hollow part, and I thought, gee, I wonder if that was an old mailbox slot of some sort.
A worker stripping the paint off the door called Nancy with a big surprise. He said there was an old nameplate under all that paint.
He says, well, do you want me to remove that? Because it has some letterings on it. I said, well, what does it say? It says Ballou of some sort. And I said, oh no, don't do that. Please leave it intact. These discoveries that just thrill us. This is part of the passion, I think, of living in a home that has so much history and meaning for us.
Meaning that provides a motivation to move on. While Tony and Nancy have accomplished a great deal in their first year, they feel they still have a lot of work to do on the building and on its history.
It's very exciting. Exciting and full of adventure and mystery, because you never know what will pop up next.
And you see houses, month to month that are being torn down and new houses being put up. So when we found this house, we wanted to restore it to its beauty. We like preserving part of history in Coronado, and I think it's people like us that will maintain the integrity of this community.
There was something of a hidden fireplace in the home. When the Santos first toured the house, they saw the beautiful marble fireplace in the living room, but not its twin in the dining room. It turns out the house's renters at the time had so much stuff in front of the dining room hearth, the Santos didn't even know it was there. It was a nice surprise when Nancy finally caught a glimpse. When we come back, a Florida owner thought he knew quite a bit about his 1920s home until items found throughout the house showed him he just scratched history's surface. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Grant Goodeve. Warren Bittner had his eye on a certain historic home in Miami Shores, Florida for several years before he bought it in 1998. As a member of his local historic preservation board, he had fallen in love with this 1926 Mediterranean revival home and its rich history. In fact, he even bought the home with most of the original furnishings still in place. So it didn't seem like Warren could possibly discover more connections to his home's past, but surprisingly he did. His home was filled with unexpected discoveries that were not only related to the history of his town, but also gave him a new, personal look at the home's original owner.
This house was a piece of art when it was constructed. Its very existence and the fine shape it's in today is a testament to the fine quality of workmanship.
The appreciation Warren Bittner has for his home's quality is matched only by his love for its past. One of its selling points for Warren was that its history dated to the development of his community.
This is clearly the most historic home in Miami Shores. All the original details are here. This house hasn't changed one bit.
Walking inside the house is like taking a step back in time. The rooms even contain many of the original furnishings belonging to the influential first occupant.
Ellen Spears Harris was the original owner of this house who built the house. She was the vice president of the Shoreline Company as they developed Miami Shores here. This was one of the first homes built.
Before he even bought the house, Warren was a bona fide expert on Ellen Spears Harris and the Shoreline Company. He had done plenty of research and had even seen her family photographs still hanging on the walls of the house. So he was surprised to realize there was even more to discover about Ellen and his home.
When I moved in, there were 10 or 12 boxes of paperwork that were from the original owners.
For an avid history buff like Warren, these boxes were filled with unexpected treasures. And as he explored these gems, he waltzed right into a distinct connection to the origins of Miami Shores.
This was a popular waltz in the 1920s, and it was the woman who built this house who came up with the idea of naming this subdivision Miami Shores, and that's why it has this name today, after the popular waltz of the time.
The music wasn't the only tie to Miami's past. Warren also discovered Shoreland Company documents advertising property prices in southern Florida decades ago. And a 1920s map ended up changing the way commuters see Miami Shores today.
This shows all the names of the original streets, and one of the projects of our Historic Preservation Board, based upon this material, was to co-designate the various streets in Miami Shores to their old historic names.
Warren was thankful to learn that Ellen did not throw anything away. She held on to an intricate wiring diagram that will now allow Warren to restore the home's original intercom system. And detailed ledgers taught him more about the invaluable original furnishings that came with the house.
This is the inventory and receipts for the furniture. First I looked at the bottom line, how much they paid for all this stuff in 25 and 26, and then compared the description of the items to what was still in the house. That was quite a find.
Warren discovered that Ellen did not slowly collect these things over time.
I came across the receipt for the books that are on the bookshelves. They were all purchased on March 17th, 1926 from one book dealer.
More pages from Ellen's past were waiting to be read. As Warren began leafing through piles of books left behind, he learned about her family tree, starting with her father.
I was reviewing them and looking through the indexes and found that in it, it gives a 2-page biography of Napoleon Spears. He was a senator from Tennessee.
A biography of Ellen's son, Emmers, was also discovered in one of the books. Emmers was a World War II officer, which may explain the 1940s military comic book also saved in the home. Learning details about Ellen's family changed the way Warren saw the many photographs also left behind in the house.
You know, first of all, it's amazing to find the pictures, to have pictures of the family, but then to be able to personalize it and give a character, you get a much more personal feeling to it.
The feeling Warren has for his home has grown more personal with the seemingly endless stream of discoveries. Handwritten letters and magazines give insight into the life in his home decades ago.
It's so rewarding as a historian and preservationist to be able to find little jewels like this, because you can then put so much history together.
There is still more history waiting to be put together as Warren carefully sorts through the items he's found. And as a purist in preservation, he is anxious to learn all he can about the woman who made Miami Shores history in his home.
It would take months to go through and read every single piece of correspondence. And I'm confident I'll be further surprised as I continue my review and search in those items.
Warren was living in a similar house in Miami Shores when Hurricane Andrew struck in 1992. His roof on that house was destroyed, and Warren set out to restore it with antique Cuban tiles. As it turns out, he bought the replacement tiles from the destroyed roof of his current house from the house's previous owner. So, in the early 90s, Warren was living under his current home's roof even before he bought his current house. Hurricane Andrew forced Warren to learn the story behind these antique tiles. When we come back, we'll discover their unusual features and fascinating history. Stay with us.
Visit.
Welcome back to If Walls Could Talk. A few moments ago, we visited the 1926 home of Warren Bittner in Miami Shores, Florida. After Hurricane Andrew, Warren had to salvage tiles to repair his previous home's roof. These are the same tiles that used to be on his current home before the hurricane struck. With all of this restoration, Warren has discovered the fascinating history of these tiles. They are between 200 and 1,000 years old and were made in Spain before being sent to Cuba and Miami. And no two tiles are exactly alike.
They're handmade individually, by hand over a person's thigh. These are all distinctive. When you put these up on the roof, it's a piece of art that you've created.
Warren has now collected enough of these distinctive pieces of art, and he plans to use them to restore his current roof back to its original look. Thanks for watching. Remember, every house has a history, so keep looking for clues to the past in your home. I'm Grant Goody.
It never stopped. It was relentless. It was just painting, scraping, and doing just constant work on this house. I don't want to ever do anything this hard again.
In this house, I've got photographs, the furniture, the books they read on their shelf. It's just like being a member of the family.
It's not rocket scientist work, it just takes some skill and I'll just attack it, and usually it comes out, you know, rather well. It's at least my standards. And my wife's, which is more important.
This Wednesday on If Walls Could Talk.